Well, welcome back to the Beyond Resistance Pod, where we share hard-won insights to build blue power in red communities and start winning. I'm Sarah Schultz.
And I'm Jennifer Austin.
Hey, Jennifer, what are you fired up about today?
Okay, so I'm fired up mad, but also fired up, I don't know. I can't say good or happy. That's not, I'll explain. We'll figure this
Motivated,
out.
maybe.
Okay, so first of all, the fact that ICE agents rappelled out of helicopters into Chicago in the middle of the night to arrest people just sleeping in their beds, not criminals, not gang members, just people here who are undocumented, and we don't even know if they're all undocumented for that matter, but that has me pissed off. Like, that is bullshit. And then I guess kind of in conjunction with that, like the whole after the Charlie Kirk murder, which was incredibly horrible. And why do we have to keep qualifying that? Like, shouldn't we just all know that murder is horrible? You know,
Right.
like I
Right.
can't believe I have to say that.
Yeah.
But after that murder, Trump and Vance, I almost called him Pence, but Vance is way different than Pence. And just, Republican pundits were all like, you all need to bring down the rhetoric. You're all violent. You leftist Democrats. Yeah. You're so horrible.
Yeah.
But at the same time, they're kidnapping people off the streets.
Yeah.
Like,
yeah.
how, like you think that we should be more civil, but you're committing violence against people, whether it's protesters or undocumented people or just brown people that you think are undocumented. Like that whole thing has me sort of incensed and just reinforces my belief and the things I've said around we need all kinds of people. We need quiet people that, call their reps and write letters, and we need super loud people that do protests. And while I am a nonviolent, for sure, protester, sometimes you do need people that are going to push back against ICE if they're willing to get arrested for it. I just think that that we need to have all kinds of people, because a different person is going to push another person into action.
Mm-hmm.
And we can't just have the same kind of voices out there all the time. And Roxane Gay was on Pod Save America this weekend and kind of saying some of the same things about like who she is as a person and what she wants to do. But then other people are more patient and other people are more not patient, like she's somewhere in the middle. But yeah, that's just kind of got me fired up of like accepting all kinds of protest and all kinds of voices of people that are willing to get out there and do the work.
Yeah. Well, I'm fired up right there with you. And the thing that really, like, the kind of the undercurrent of all of this is just like that's existed since we saw Trump just coming down that stupid escalator, was that hypocrisy does not matter. So yes, like let's hear some rhetoric about turning down the like heat or whatever. It's always different. The double standard is like rampant, and no one is connecting the dots. No one is saying, like, no one on the right is saying, like, I'm going to say this thing about like like healthcare freedom when it comes to vaccinations, but I'm not going to extend that to healthcare freedom when it comes to medically necessary abortions. And like that gap is not very wide, but they're not willing to close it. They're not willing to see how hypocritical it is to say both of those things at the same time.
Yeah.
And there's so many more, like, free speech, right? Like, Charlie Kirk gets free speech to say whatever he wants. It's all about free speech, but we don't get free speech when it comes to what we say in a protest or whatever. Like, it's just,
or about Charlie Kirk.
Exactly. We get like canceled and, taken off the air, and like Jimmy Kimmel did or whatever. Yeah. And like the hypocrisy is outrageous, and it has been for a long time. And we could probably sit and brainstorm, maybe we should do this, like hypocrisy, list, and we could just come up with hundreds of ways that it's just absolutely hypocritical. And by the way, those ICE agents or whoever they were, they rappelled down onto the rooftops of housing in Chicago, and not only ripped like adults out of their beds, but they ripped children out of their
Yeah,
beds,
they
and
don't
they
care.
lined them up with zip ties or literally zip tied children together. And we're supposed to turn down the heat? Like
Yes.
that, it's outrageous. And the other thing in this like universe of being fired up that I'm really worried about is I hear about these things from my friends who follow X/Twitter, or I hear about them. I don't hear about these things in traditional news media.
Mm-hmm.
And 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 I think that we are losing a grip on who the single source of the truth is. Like, what is the fucking truth?
Yeah.
Like, where do we look to find the truth? It used to be the 6 o'clock news or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
It used to be some like trusted sources, and none of those trusted sources on the right or the left, or what should be in the neutral middle, because that's
Yeah.
what the media and the news should be, are gone. Like
Mm-hmm.
it just feels like they're gone. And I knew that's been an undercurrent for me for a long, long time. And then when all of the stuff was coming out about Gaza and the genocide and all of that, and like seeing like friends posting about things that were from literal people on the ground, but not seeing this a similar message show up in the nightly news or the traditional
Yeah.
news sources, who owns the truth anymore?
Mm-hmm.
Where is that single source of the truth? And that's really scary. That's really, that plus the hypocrisy that's going on is a very scary moment that I'm fired up about for sure.
Yeah, no, that's actually that bothers me a lot too, because I listen to a lot of left-leaning news sources and I mostly trust them, but also the right trust their news sources, and I know their
Right.
news sources are lying to them. And so, there's always just that little bit of like, I trust these people, but but what if? And even listening to some trusted news sources, like I've determined like this one I feel pretty trustworthy and they tend to stick to the facts. And this one over here, they talk about the facts, but they might blow them up a little bit. I've heard different stories on how much
Yeah.
the ACA or like your insurance premiums for healthcare for everybody, not just ACA,
Yep.
are going to go up. And I've heard it everywhere from like 75% a month to 400% a month. And it's like, it doesn't do us any favors
Yeah.
to make
To
shit up.
Right.
It's
Right.
not
To
doing
be
us any
extreme.
favors.
Yeah. To not have some sources. I mean, on that, like I know that the folks that I work with are experiencing some pretty steep increases in
Yeah.
their company health insurance. Those who have had renewals since all of this has gone down, and
Mm-hmm.
that's more and more. A lot of companies have renewals that are effective January 1st. And so you start to get those like
Yeah.
now through end of November is when those companies, their HR departments are starting to get those renewal proposals in. So we'll start to know more about
Which is
that.
why the Democrats are pushing to get the ACA tax credits figured out
Yeah.
now,
Yeah.
because so many people have to renew their health insurance. And like
Yep.
with, I don't know what every company is like. I'm sure some companies are like, this is your health insurance, you take it or you don't. But like with the company my husband works for, there's different levels, there's
Yep.
different ones, and we have to determine which one we can afford based on which things we expect to come up. And yeah, we need the
Well, the
information.
Yeah, and those things that are offered can change year to
Hmm.
year. Like you might have like premium options that are they're just too expensive.
Yeah.
They're not available anymore. And you might have employers add some really subpar options just so that they can provide some level of health insurance.
Hmm.
But the coverage is really low. And those are decisions that companies all across the
Yeah.
country are going to be making right now,
Yes.
based on this, and also deciding what percentage are they going to assume and what percentage are their employees going to assume
Yeah.
out of their paychecks. So this is not just people on the ACA who are, getting those credits. It's literally everybody who has health insurance right now. And I, for one, appreciate the Democrats in Washington, standing strong on this
Yes.
issue for all of us. So
Yeah.
that's what we're fired up about today. Yeah, so we're gonna roll into a interview that Jennifer and I just were able to do with Congresswoman Haley Stevens, who's running for the Michigan U.S. Senate. And it was a great conversation about all sorts of things, including how to build local power and what she's seen as a person who flipped her own district in what used to be a red area, too. So stay tuned for that conversation.
Hey, we have somebody to welcome to the pod today. She is a resident of Oakland County. She was the chief of staff to Obama's U.S. Auto Rescue Task Force that helped save over 200,000 jobs during the Great Recession. She's running for the U.S. Senate seat in Michigan, which will soon be vacated by Gary Peters. And she currently represents Michigan's 11th congressional district in Washington. So she's the Oakland County representative. She is Congresswoman Stevens. Welcome to the pod.
Hey, thank you so much.
Welcome. It's so awesome to have you here. So if you don't mind, we'll just get right into it because this is a busy couple of weeks in DC. So my first question is just, this election is a long ways away, right? It's from, now till, next November. And the three of us are, in it, right? We're plugged into politics and all the things. So of course we're here and we're talking about all of the elections and all of the candidates. But for those folks who are listening to us who are not as obsessively plugged in as we are, I wonder if you could just start by sharing a little bit about why you're running for U.S. Senate and what your priorities are.
Yeah, well, I see this as a really serious moment for our state with rising costs, concern about benefit checks, chaotic tariffs. Just to give a snapshot, Donald Trump put 55 tariff announcements in place in the first 100 days of his administration, and they're still going on. And not only are they causing costs of everyday goods to go up, and I did write a bill called No Tariffs on Groceries Act, it's also creating a lot of job insecurity and frankly, some unemployment. And in Michigan right now, we've got some of the fastest growing unemployment in the union. And our state tends to be a canary in a coal mine for these economic issues. And my life's work has been defined by putting up my hand for Michigan in tough times and delivering. If it was on that U.S. Auto Rescue in the administration of Barack Obama, going to work day in and day out, very, very long days on that initiative that were definitely uncertain. And I was the person from Michigan on that team. I told the operators at the White House and at the Treasury Department, wire the phone calls for Michigan to me. I want to hear from people back home because folks were freaked out. I mean, they were worried about their jobs. They were worried about their small business and everything they had ever worked for. And we know we made it through that time. But what I'm hearing from people right now is so eerily similar, except for this time it's Donald Trump or Elon Musk inflicted chaos, and it's not acceptable. I'm running for U.S. Senate against Mike Rogers, who ran last time. He lost to Alyssa Slotkin, but he also made very clear when he announced his campaign that he wants to rubber stamp Trump. And I don't think that's acceptable. I want to rubber stamp Michigan. I want to cut the best deals for Michigan. And this is why I was just recently named one of the most effective lawmakers in the Congress. This is why I'm writing bill after bill, using the power of the pen to stand up so that the military doesn't get deployed on American citizens, so we can keep grocery costs low, that we invest in public education, and that we support our communities and our workers with tax fairness.
Yeah, those are all really important. And thank you so much for standing up for Americans, especially, Michiganders. And somebody recently was posted somewhere, is that really what they call themselves? Yes, that is really what we call ourselves.
Yes, we are Michiganders, loud and
We are
proud.
Michiganders. So I have a question for you. So already we have 3 Senate Democrats that are caving on the continuing resolution of Trump's budget plan. What would you tell Senate Democrats about the importance of standing up against the CR and the spending bill without protections for the ACA and Medicaid?
Well, look, I spent this summer on a Made in Michigan tour, and even now, as I'm, traveling around the state, as I'm home talking with people here in Michigan, costs are through the roof. And in fact, one of the first meetings I did during my Made in Michigan tour, which started right after the tax bill was passed, I sat down with the township supervisor in Canton, Michigan, Anne Marie Graham Hudak, who you should have on the show, by the way. She's fantastic. But
I'm writing her name down.
Yes. But what she shared with me is that as a township supervisor, they were already getting notices about what could be covered and what couldn't. And they were going to have to tell their employees. And it was, you could just see it unfolding that this is going to be notifications about rising costs that are on some of the most personal and important things for people, which is their healthcare, which is their prescription drugs, which is procedures. And it's just not acceptable. Not only are high healthcare costs wrong, kicking people off their healthcare is wrong. And that's what we're facing. That is what we are in the middle of. And so, no, we're not going to kick this down the road. This is very important. It is on the minds of all Michiganders. And in fact, already today, I've heard from multiple people asking me to continue to work to fight for their health care and to keep costs low. And I believe we can get there because the American people are speaking out. Michiganders are speaking out. And that's always what I am so excited and eager to represent, which is the voice of Michigan.
I know our listeners are pretty proactive and they're already calling their reps, but for all of you out there, call your reps. Even if you think that, they're a Democrat and they're going to do what you want, they need that reinforcement, not only for themselves, but for the data to say, this is why I'm standing up for this. So call your reps. And just as a little piece of information for any of our viewers that find themselves like I have been for the past 3 days, 4 days, whatever it's been, arguing with Republicans online, maybe not the best use of my time, but it's what I've been doing. Just the ACA tax credits that we want are not going to undocumented migrants. You can't get health care from the United States government if you are not documented. I'm trying to think of some of the other arguments I've had with people, like the lies you're hearing, that's what they are, lies.
Yeah. Which is, is par for the course these days. The thing that I also think about as an HR professional in my day job is the impact that the rippling out impact that this will have on health insurance premiums that you get from your employer, which is going to, raise those premium, the share that you pay out of your paycheck, likely, because employers will not be able to bear the burden of the increases. And I'm hearing some of my clients who've already heard from their insurance carriers that it's going to be 20 or 30% increase in health insurance year over year. Which is very scary. So our podcast is really focused on kind of the local level. So you got to come to our Blue Gala back in May. Thanks so much for coming. At that Blue Gala, we shared some of our election results where we talked about, Midland used to be a very strong conservative Republican area, and we've been able to trend blue over the last 3 cycles in ways that other areas have not been able to accomplish. And so Jennifer and I, and the whole effort of this podcast is to help give other local Dems in other communities, those folks that are on the ground like we were 3 cycles ago, give them the tools that we didn't have, right, to fight back against this authoritarian takeover and to bring more people out in their community to get energized. So I wonder if you could tell us a little bit about what you're seeing on the ground as you're kind of talking to other communities in Michigan through your campaign efforts or from your constituents, as far as like the energy and the like local kind of building kind of capacity for what's to come.
Yeah, and I'll also share with you that as someone who flipped a congressional seat that hadn't been held by a Democrat since like almost before the moon landing, it was done through the listening, learning, and leading that frankly running for office deserves. Being in office is also what that deserves, that mantra, but also living by that. And now that I'm campaigning for United States Senate, what I am so eager to do is meet Michiganders where they're at. Showing up in areas where people need to be heard, where maybe they also are not experiencing the higher vote turnout because they haven't felt heard in a while.
Right.
And, I have built very unique coalitions. Poll after poll shows I'm in a very strong position to beat Mike Rogers next fall. And that is because I work, you know, with people and in their communities. And, I show up, just getting endorsed by the Michigan Democratic Party Black Caucus. I've been there time and time again, with community leaders rolling up my sleeves and also just showing folks how I want to make government work for them. It's, Michiganders taxpayer dollars that are going in. This is, earned benefits that are under attack. And these are resources that need to come back to people or come back into our communities. And that's something that I've been pushing for each and every single day. And then I think just in terms of what was really on display in May at the gala that you all had, which it doesn't even feel like it was that long ago. And I guess it
I
wasn't.
know, I
But
know.
but it was electric. And I think, one of the things that I use my office to do is build a sense of community. And as volunteers and as community leaders, you all are doing that. And we need to keep digging deep. I know when I flipped Michigan's 11th district, and even now, one of the ways in which I reached out to parents is I held meet and greets at homes that also included babysitters. So parents could bring their
That's awesome.
kids and show up and talk to someone who's running for elected office. And just what we know to be true is right now, everyone is feeling the strain. There's a knot in the stomach when folks are going to the grocery store. It's not a made up fact that we've got $1.3 trillion of credit card debt in this country. And that means that that grocery bill is going on credit cards, that people are making choices about kids after school activity and food, and they're just feeling really strained. And what Donald Trump is doing is giving the tax cuts to the billionaires and not lifting a finger for Michigan families and Michigan workers and Michigan jobs, which is why it's such an insult that we lost the semiconductor project in Mundy, Michigan. That was going to be 10,000 jobs, a decade of work.
Yeah.
It just slaps in the face. And it's so evident that we really need the right voice at the table when we're, negotiating and when we're pushing through policies to make sure that Michigan is heard and to make sure that we get results.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Congresswoman
for
Stevens,
sure. And
I love how you're talking about building relationships. That's something that Jennifer and I talk about a ton, which is like trying to have like transformational relationships with groups and individual people and not like go in a transactional way, right? That just shows up every election cycle. And what I remember from you about mostly, I remember a lot of like what you said and all the things from our Blue Gala back in May. But what I remember most is you stayed. Like you were there, you basically closed the place with us. Just having conversations with people. And, that was really noteworthy here in Midland, in a place where, 10 years ago, we wouldn't have even been on the map as far as, getting folks running for national offices here in Midland to do that. So I want to just thank you for that. And it's just indicative of your commitment, right, to those relationships and to meeting us here on the ground. So thank you.
Yeah, and it's so true. Like, I remember when I first put up my hand to run for US Congress, I mean, it seemed like, oh, good luck, you're going to flip Michigan's 11th district. And people asked me how they could be involved. And I was like, hey, have me over to your house, invite family members who didn't vote the same way you
Yeah.
did. Let's sit down, let's build relationships. Because honestly, a lot of times, not every time, but a lot of times, seeing is believing. Showing up makes a huge difference. Obviously, at your blue gala, that's, the community you've built. But I guarantee you, there were former Republicans in that room.
Oh, for sure.
For sure.
Right?
Yeah.
There's former Republicans on our executive board.
That is true. That is true.
And so, that's very true. And the one thing I specifically remember that we bonded on, besides the fact that the whole evening was lovely and whatnot, but you were like, can I take a picture of your charts? I love your charts. That we showed those in the pod last week. We were talking about Midland Progress. So the charts are continuing.
That's my kind of Dem Club, Yep. And how about that Congresswoman of yours, by the way? I so appreciate how you have her back, Kristen McDonald-Rivette. And
we love her. Yeah. And she, we invite her to everything, of course, and she usually lets us know when she can come, and she's always welcome to speak, but we totally understand Congress people are busy, and we totally get that. She showed up at our chili fundraiser this Sunday. I had no idea she was coming because she'd been in Grand Blanc because of that shooting, all this last week. And she's coming back to Washington when she's supposed to. But yeah, she was here, and she's like, I want to come see my people, and I need a little. And she said, like, this has been balm to my soul, because it was a really, really, really tough week of what she was dealing with, and being with people that have campaigned with her and love her. And, it was really good for her, and it was really good for us too. So
yeah, for sure.
So next question, there are some hot button issues that the Democrats kind of have to deal with right now, statewide and locally. Most notably, the ongoing conflict in Gaza, and focusing on trans issues, or the should we not focus on trans issues, that voters and leaders feel very strongly about. And we've even had these conversations right here in our community about what we should and should not be doing, and which issues we should and should not be focusing on. So it's kind of felt everywhere. But I just kind of wonder if you have any, insight on navigating those issues when talking to potential voters, and what advice you would give to local politics and other candidates about how to navigate those issues.
Well, I can certainly, tell you where I am, and also tell you, what is, the alarm bell ringing right now for Michigan, and why it is so important that people get involved, that they, if you're putting up your hand to run for office, even at the local level, it's going to make a difference, because of the values of dignity and respect for everyone, of equal opportunity. And I know when your group gets together to endorse candidates or to support candidates, you're doing so because you're part of this great deliberation, the discourse of our democracy that advances and moves societies forward. And I'm, just to reaffirm, it really is cost, right? I mean, this is a fully paralyzed veteran reaching out to me as I was getting ready to run for United States Senate, as I was really, mulling this over, and it kind of pushed open that door, because this fully paralyzed veteran reached out to me to ask me if he was going to get his benefit check because of a billionaire with a chainsaw.
Yeah.
I mean, it's people worried that they're going to miss a Social Security check because it's being called a Ponzi scheme, and because people are writing it off, who work for Donald Trump, and it can't be trusted. But I think in terms of some of these other topics that you mentioned, we are at 2 years of this war in the Middle East, and it has been heartbreaking. It has been really hard to take. And I think we can all agree that we want to see lasting peace, that we want to see this war end, that we want to see the people of Gaza and the people of Israel reach a lasting ceasefire and that they can live in peace side by side. We want to see the hostages return home. Hamas needs to surrender. We need to see that happen. But as someone who has voted for humanitarian aid every chance I could get, I'm in my 4th term in the Congress. I continue to call on Israel and the United States to work together to get more aid into Gaza. And I pray for peace. And I know for young people, they've seen war a lot in their life, and this war has been hard to take. And I believe that pushing towards lasting peace can get us there. And I think that is, the area in which, we can hone in and all come together for agreement.
Mhm.
As it pertains to our children on a multitude of levels, we want our kids to be safe. If it has to do with sports, kids need to be safe playing sports. Decisions about sports are going to be made by parents. They're going to be made by school districts, athletic associations, and educators. And we do not need politicians creating hate and using that to divide us. And so, look, I am a very transparent lawmaker. I will tell people, and answer tough questions about, anything, because that's my job. And I really believe we need to have more conversation. And, this is also why what you all are doing with your podcast is so very important as well. So thank you.
Yeah, that's one thing I really agree on is we've just had people like, oh, you guys don't talk about that. And not on our podcast. They're kind of like, do whatever you want in your podcast. But as leaders of our party or leaders of protests or whatever, don't talk about trans issues. Don't talk about, Gaza. Don't talk about this. And like, my feeling is if we talk about it more, maybe we'll find some common ground. Like it's you see it in families just where like, a husband and a wife don't want to talk about an issue, they bury it. Well, it just festers, it doesn't solve anything. So I think we can look at that in all levels, whether it's your kids, your community, your country, talking about stuff, trying to find solutions in a proactive way is much better than just kind of pretending like they don't exist.
And we all know there's a lot of misinformation out there. I mean,
Yeah.
I run into it all the time. I mean, even little things like people confuse me with somebody else or something like that. And I'm like, wait a minute, no, I'm Congresswoman Haley Stevens representing
Yeah.
Olson County. I mean, it's, right, because
Right.
like you're saying, not everyone is, as hyper engaged in every little in and out. And we've got a president who, rambles and talks till he's blue in the face, creates a lot of chaos and confusion. Again, those 55 tariff announcements in 100 days, that coming down on people, like their heads are spinning. And that's just one example. He does this all the time. We shouldn't be afraid to use our words. We shouldn't be afraid to talk truth. We shouldn't be afraid to talk through issues. And we also shouldn't be afraid to stand up for working Michiganders, for young people, for families, for retirees, for people who are counting on good policies that can really, truly improve their lives.
That's right. That's one thing that really blows my mind is like they gave the GOP in their budget with no Democratic help, gave $1 trillion tax cut to billionaires and the wealthy, but they aren't interested in making sure that working class people who make under $60,000 a year can afford their ACA. Like it just blows my mind. Like what are we doing here? The billionaires don't need a tax cut, but the working class people actually need ACA and for it to be affordable.
Yeah, I mean, and that's one point on this. Other things that have long surrounded this conversation is our marginal tax rate. On the healthcare front, as this gets implemented, a family of four making $125,000 a year will see their annual healthcare costs go up by $7,700. That is real money. That
Ridiculous.
is a real hit to the budget. Where does that come from? And so this really is about tax fairness, and this is about making sure that people get more money in their pocketbooks.
Yeah, for sure. So just to kind of finish out our questions, I wanted to kind of bring us back to kind of the local level, because that's sort of what this podcast is all about. And I wonder if you could share a piece or two of advice that you would give local activists and political volunteers across the country when it comes to, really working maybe to establish themselves in their communities if they're in a red community, or start to really build blue power in the communities that they're in, especially if they're more conservative. What's some advice that you'd share to those folks?
Okay, I am so glad you asked this question, because I was just thinking as Jen and I were wrapping up the last one, that one of my favorite quotes that was actually passed out at a Democrat club meeting that I was at when I was first running for Congress. I mean, it was literally one of the first meetings where I announced my run. It was a Margaret Mead quote, and it was her famous words about never underestimating the power of a small group of people and their ability to change the world, because that's indeed all that ever has. And that gives me the chills just saying that to you both right now, because I think that really symbolizes so much of the progress and the work that you have been making. And another anecdote is, I'm going to leave the name out of this, but when I was first running for Congress to become the Democrat in Michigan's 11th district, someone said to me, someone, pretty well known, they said, "Oh, you're running for Congress in this county, Oakland County, as a Democrat? Good luck." And folks, that wasn't that long ago, right? And it felt inconceivable that of that progress. And this is something my dear friend and former House colleague, now Senator Alyssa Slotkin, talks about. It is just, it's seeing that long term. Congresswoman Hillary Scholten out in Grand Rapids, the first Democrat basically ever to hold a full two terms in the job, and working hard to get back there for a third term. And she's holding down the fort in West Michigan and really leaning in. And we've got to believe in grassroots. So much of our democracy does feel challenged. And I know sometimes people feel suffocated. Like, what can I do? Like you were saying, oh, should I still call my rep? Please call your rep. Please make sure we hear from you. Please, if you see us, out and about, pull us aside, let us know. My office is always fully staffed. We take a lot of pride in getting back to everyone. That is absolutely how I plan to do it as a United States Senator too, because your voice matters. Your vote and your voice matters. And I will tell you, as a representative in this climate right now, that is also how I feel, which is the one thing I have, in the minority in the House, and, the House and the Senate being, right under Donald Trump's thumb, run by, his party and the super majority. I tell everyone I've got my vote and my voice, and I'm using both accordingly, and I am not compromising at the expense of my values. I am fighting for you, Michigan. I win for Michigan because I fight for you.
Yeah, that's something that I find very important. The back to the community part of it is that, we're pitching ourselves to other podcasts and other groups and whatnot, trying to get involved with them. And that's one of the things I say is, we've tried a national message. We've tried being a national party, and not that we're not, we have to be a national party, but the power that we need to build starts at the very local level, at getting Democrats out to vote in even rural red communities. And you can't build that with a national message. You need your neighbor, your family, your friend that's going to talk to people in their own community. And that's where we really need to be building it.
Yeah, and it's like that other old adage, all politics is local. And it's true. And a lot of times, people don't realize there are other people who think the way they do. And I will tell you, this does all come back to the economy, and it's a personal economy. And look, we have got to showcase that, because already we're not even a year into the Trump administration, and there's so many head spinning things that are taking place. But one that reaches everyone is the fact that there is now uncertainty. There's uncertainty around jobs, there's rising unemployment, there's rising costs. It's harder to get ahead. And the only people who are getting the pat on the back are billionaires. It's not right.
Yeah.
And it's not working for Michigan, and they don't understand us.
Yeah.
That's right.
For real. And I think the message is getting out. So just a quick story. Last night, my daughter went to the grocery store to buy shampoo. She's 17. I moved some money into her account to do that. And she called me and said, Mom, inflation is really bad. You're going to have to give me some more money for this shampoo. She was like, she, as a 17-year-old who's not much of a care in the world, is noticing the last time she went and bought shampoo, it was less money than it is now. So so I had to move some more money so she could have shampoo this morning. But I think that, like, you're right, like, it's all very personal, and it's hitting all of us in all sorts of ways. And that's one thing that seems like most folks can agree on, right?
Your daughter, I'm proud of her.
I know.
I love that. I
didn't even know she knew what inflation was, but apparently
Yeah.
she does. So
like at 17, right? You're so vulnerable. Like, you're still pretty dependent on your parents. Like,
Yeah.
maybe you've been to your first couple of jobs, like you've been able to earn some money. And I really do worry about young people. I mean, we have got a mini recession almost going on with youth unemployment right now. You know, the 18 to 24-year-olds, or post 24 into age 26, you know, who's getting access to jobs, recent graduates. You know, we're literally at almost 12% unemployment. So these are other things that we need to speak out about, because it's obviously the cost of goods, and it's also the wages and the accessibility of good paying jobs, which is why, again, these policies of this current administration are not working for us. We shouldn't have lost a semiconductor plant, you know, a bill that I worked so hard on, that I helped to author, and, you know, that our governor worked, you know, day in and day out, you know, even spoke to the president about it. And it's like, his tariffs still screwed it up for us.
Yeah.
So
and we both have
anyway,
17-year-olds that are going to college next year, and, you know, just navigating all of that and trying to figure out, like, my son should be thinking about, you know, his senior year, and he's like, oh, don't pay for that for me, Mom. I know things are a little tight right now. And it's like, I don't want you to think about that. I want to be thinking about that we're putting money away for college, not how are we going to afford all of the things that we afforded a few years ago.
Yeah, for sure. Well, Congresswoman Stevens, Jennifer, I really appreciate your time today. I know you're a busy person, and, you know, we really, you know, appreciate all the work that you do for Michigan, and for stepping forward to run for this Senate seat. And hopefully we can check in again in a couple months or so and see how it's going.
that'd be great.
I want to
And
hear more about how you flipped that 11th congressional district.
I want to hear that too. Sounds very familiar.
We'll do a slideshow.
With some charts, right? Some line
exactly.
graphs, and awesome. Thank you again so much.
You guys.
Really appreciate it. Really
Thank you.
appreciate
Thank
your
you.
spending time with us.
Cheers.
Bye.